Good afternoon. First, thank you very much for coming to Relativity Fest. Really appreciate your attendance, and then thank you for joining our session this afternoon. Probably a little, considering we're halfway through the event already. If you haven't already, well, hopefully you have. You've checked out the mobile app. It's really handy for kind of floor plans and an agenda. I'm Mike Decker. I've been with Relativity. I'll have to pause there. I almost said Kira. So I've been with Relativity for about 8.5 years now. For the last 2-3 years, I've been focused on our appliance and notebook business, which will really tie into our hybrid model that we're going to be talking about. I'm going to hand it over here to Sean.
I'm Sean Doherty. Can everyone hear me? I don't project as well as Mike. I can hear that from here. I'm an analyst for 451 Research. At least that's what I'm doing at this conference. And I've been covering the legal tech industry for about 15 years. And I was an analyst for 451 Research for almost 2 years. And here I am talking about
Hybrid.
Hybrid. I haven't actually checked this out yet. Am I going the wrong way? Or? There we go. Our agenda. What is hybrid? Choosing the best application environment for your e-discovery. That covers both bullets there. And then Mike is going to be taking over and talking about what is the Relativity hybrid model and why does that matter to you. Features and use cases. And then the model onboarding and support to finish up. And I know that Mike wants to comment all through my presentation.
Absolutely.
And I hope to be commenting on his presentation as well.
And it's not a really big crowd, so feel free to ask questions as we're going, and we're going to have hopefully lots of participation. A lot of what Sean's going to talk about is survey data, so we're going to do a lot of audience surveys as well, just hand participation.
Yeah, I hope to get a lot of audience participation, so you can start stretching out right now. Yeah. Thank you. Well, first off, if I said hybrid, what's the next word you think of? How many think of car? Okay. How many think of train? Okay. How many think of cloud? Getting a few more here. How many think of e-discovery? Not too many. I was hoping to get more. So when I talked about submarine, anybody hybrid submarine? Okay, no Navy Sea Dogs here. So I guess when you look at, let me go back to the hybrid vehicle for a moment. A lot of people think when they talk about hybrid that they have an application that's working on premise and that they have an application working in the cloud. And the two don't meet, but they've got one and the other. But when you talk about a hybrid car, a lot of people's experience when they're driving around in the car is the engine takes over for propulsion, and then the electric takes over for propulsion when the batteries are charged. But in reality, a full hybrid is actually doing both the gasoline engine and the electric is actually propelling the car in a full hybrid. And that's what Mike and I are talking about today, is a full hybrid application for e-discovery.
Yeah, I know when you mentioned that yesterday, Sean, for the first time, I know I was guilty as charged, as I kind of think of it as the, just one or the other and not kind of in cohesion working together.
Oh, yeah. And I guess when you talk about cloud, there's various aspects of cloud. On-premise, private cloud, hosted private cloud, infrastructure as a service, and software as a service. I guess we all, the cloud technology is going to work on-premise as well. So when you actually talk about a cloud with anyone, it's oftentimes not clear as to where you're running that cloud application. So it does do it on-premise and in a hosted environment, private cloud. Infrastructure as a service, that's basically providing the infrastructure, VMs, probably the first tier of any kind of as a service started with the infrastructure as a service and VMs. Amazon, Azure's got their VMs as well. And then software as a service. And there are plenty of instances of software as a service out there, just loading up an application and hosting it for subscribers. And you're probably wondering where platform as a service is. And that's somewhere in between IaaS, try to say that quickly, and SaaS, where you're actually having a development environment and supporting that and loading up your own application and serving that up. And then we have hybrid computing, and I just kind of alluded to that with the cars. When you're into hybrid computing, you're actually computing both on-premise and in the cloud. And when you've got a hybrid cloud, you're actually operating an application between 2 or more cloud services, whether it might be Amazon or Azure, or, which is kind of public, but in other words, you're operating an application across clouds. Back to the agenda. Okay. This everyone should know about. This is basically what our reality is today, and I don't know where I'm wearing these, because I only need them when I read my notes. Otherwise, everybody's fuzzy in the room. But every day, you can see how much data is being created. Now, I didn't make that up, but some analysts made that up. How many here think that analysts make stuff up? Okay, I don't know what analyst got that, but I don't footnote it, but it wasn't us, but it was some analysts did. But there's a lot of data being created out there. And it's being created in many places. Storage locations are proliferating on premises and in the cloud, shared providers, there's file shares like Box, Dropbox, you name it, files are all over the place. Social media as well being a file share as well, and all the comments and other data that's created with social media, all the social habits are being stored. Then you look at all the data being created even in your IT infrastructure, where it's being burdened by all this excessive data, which is a lot of data to keep on hand and also degrades application performance tremendously.
Yeah, to me, I'm sorry, it's just, when I look at that, it's just more. It's jumps, and it's more data, more uses, more places. Just keep hearing more.
Yeah, and Andrew had mentioned that in the keynote. Basically, it's the 3 Vs. Velocity, volume, variety of data is really increasing all across the board. And e-discovery process, as a result of preserving all this data, creates even larger amounts of preservation data and even duplicate data when you're actually in litigation. You've got a copy produced for an opponent, send that to an opponent, more data, more duplication. Going into court could be replicated on laptops or even duplicating it even more. So you've got even more data. And then you look at all the global privacy regulations that are out there, so we've got even more stringent requirements on handling data and keeping data in certain places. And all this on top of the fact that we still have to do e-discovery and litigation. And we have preservation requirements from anywhere from legal holds into litigation. So all this, increased volumes, increased sizes of matters, but courts aren't giving us any more time to litigate matters, are they? So large matters, short time frames. And when we look at where this is going for cloud, you can see that this is actually data accumulated from our Voice of the Enterprise 451 research. And we poll over 60,000 IT professionals on a quarterly basis to get data as to what they're using, what software applications they're using, what kind of budgets they have. And this is some of the data that was returned on cloud use. And you can see that if you take the cloud use from SaaS down to on-premises private cloud, we're moving from maybe about 40% to 60% in the next 2 years. And then if you look at the present on-premise use of non-cloud applications, we're moving from 60 to 40. And this kind of blew away a lot of the hype around cloud, because we're really moving into more and more of a hybrid situation. Cloud a little bit more, but we're still working a lot on-premise.
Yeah, when I see this data, that's what jumps out at me is, yes, for years we've been hearing cloud, that's where all the growth is, and it is definitely growing the fastest, but it's not like the on-premise, non-cloud, tomorrow, next year, it's not disappearing. It's still a significant, almost half of 40% in the future. So that's a significant, amount of workspaces, data that are going to be running on-premise. So it's really this drives towards that hybrid model. You're going to have some things in the cloud, some things on-premise for a while, if not.
Oh, very much so. And I guess what it comes down to is when you're an IT leader is, okay, where's the best place to run an application? Where's the most cost-efficient place? Where's our infrastructure? Is it in the cloud? Is it on-premise? And what are our costs? So some of that information comes through. So 451 Research kind of looked at their cloud, I guess the movement for cloud, movement on-premise, and wanted to do a survey. And we conducted a survey with Relativity in regard to what might be the best place to run your e-discovery applications. In other words, where's the best place to run your workloads for e-discovery? And we took over 300 e-discovery professionals in corporations, law firms, and legal service providers, 100 each. And we did those from the US, UK, Hong Kong, Germany, France, and Australia. And we got 150 respondents from the US and 30 each from the other separate countries and, of course, the city-state, Hong Kong. And each of these has a profile. Regional offices in North America predominated, and then Europe, and then Asia Pacific third, and then the following South America, Middle East, and Australia, or Africa kind of trailed.
Let's get a breakdown of the audience here. Can raise your hand if you're with a corporation. Okay, handful. And then law firms. Anyone here from a law firm? Excellent. Yeah. And then, is everyone else there with a hosting partner or with support? Excellent, excellent.
Other? Okay.
ISV or something. Right. What about geography? Who, US or Canada, North America based? Okay, definitely the majority. Anyone Europe? A few for Europe? Any Australia or Asia, APAC? Okay, excellent.
Oh, very good. And some more criteria on the survey itself. Corporate respondents, we got corporations with over 3,000 employees. So they weren't small companies. And the law firms were more than 150 attorneys, some of our requirements. And many of those law firms were more than 500 attorneys. For LSPs, we required more than 100 employees. And many of those, actually, we got over 500 employees for LSPs. Some other criteria that I didn't, jump into graphics for. Most of the respondents identified litigation as a primary reason for e-discovery, and I think I do have a graphic on that a little later. And overwhelming respondents expect a significant or slight increase in their budgets for next year. So they're looking to buy more e-discovery software. Sorry. And increasing, let's see, our development e-discovery next 12 months. Yeah, interesting. Sorry. Okay, real cloud adoption. Here's another one that kind of demystified cloud for me. We asked the respondents about their cloud adoption strategies and whether or not they had a formal strategy, whether or not they were at the planning stage, whether they were considering it but no formal plan, and some even had no plan. So just a little over half had a formal strategy for cloud. And this is both law firm, corporations, and LSPs. And at the planning stage, 29%. Considering it but no formal plan, 13%, and then no plan, 6%. So I expected much more on the organizations that had cloud plans. And here, they didn't have it, out of the 300 polled.
Yeah, let's do another poll and see if we compare comparably or not. Raise the hands who's at the top here. Have a formal plan in place and actively implementing it. Yeah, so like about half. And those of you that say you're more in the planning stages, kind of researching, about a third. And then how many kind of just right now considering or no formal plans or kind of,
Okay.
it seemed pretty consistent on the tears.
Yeah, very consistent.
Yep.
Okay, so the primary reason for e-discovery, I kind of mentioned it up there. Corporation use, due diligence in M&A and partnering was high. Litigation for law firms, obviously e-discovery was high for the primary use. And this was all pretty straightforward and expected for the most part. Any comment on that, Mike?
No.
Okay.
Don't want their arms to get tired.
Sure. Okay. So on-premises e-discovery use. And this is one of the questions we had. In other words, what kind of e-discovery software are you running on-premises? What kind of tasks are you accomplishing with on-premise software? You can see that corporations were very high in data analytics on-premise, as opposed to law firms. Also with processing, and the next was production. And for law firm use, you can see that collection was high and review was high, along with production and processing. And at the very right end of the spectrum there, you can see that predictive coding was the least used on-premise for both law firms and corporations, out of the 300 that were polled here.
We definitely see that on the rise, though, at least from the
yeah.
data we collect from our users.
And just out of curiosity, especially with data analytics, how many people know that they're running data analytics on-premise with their e-discovery software? Oh, very good. Okay, so let's keep that going. How about for processing on-premise? Production? Review? Some of them have hands all the way up.
Okay.
Collection? I'm going to skip early case assessment. What about legal hold on-premise? Got a few. Predictive coding? Okay, very good. Now software as a service e-discovery tasks. You can see data analytics is still high, both running it on-premise and software as a service. And also, when you look at, remember the law firm looking at review software on-premise, it's still high for software as a service as well. And also the review category for corporations is high for software as a service. But you can see processing and production for corporations is really high. And then yet, on the far right, predictive coding, software as a service, is still kind of low even for that. So let me ask again, software as a service, data analytics, how many are using it in the cloud? Got one or two? What about processing? Production? Your hand up is...
We do it at all.
Okay.
Yep.
All right, let me see if I get a little bit more legal hold, software as a service. Wow. I'll have to just drill into what they're doing for legal hold. Okay, cloud-based e-discovery adoption. Now, this kind of closely mirrors some of our cloud strategies. And I was very surprised at all this data coming through, where the US was kind of a laggard when you looked at e-discovery, cloud-based e-discovery. And the leaders for cloud-based e-discovery were all in Europe, UK, France, and Germany, all across the board with this kind of data. And that was surprising to me. I thought the US would be kind of charging the lead for that, and they're not. Australia and the US are actually doing well with their discovery and evaluation, and the US is high in running trials, but again, it kind of mirrors the expectations of what I've seen here with everyone, and my expectations were a little bit on the hype end, I guess.
Same.
So here we asked how many providers each of the respondents had for e-discovery. And this wasn't surprising either. Single providers, 40% in corporations, 30% for law firms, but then 2 or more providers. And just look at the problem that may result in. Transferring data between providers, time it takes between providers, error and correction between providers, handling exceptions. So this was kind of an eye-opener as well, especially the amount that has 2 or more just added up across the board.
So if you're with a corporation or a law firm, raise your hand, do you have just a single provider that you work with? Okay. Raise your hand if you have 2 or more.
Okay.
Yeah, that was my big takeaway. It's more than half. More than half are working with multiple partners.
Okay, and then we came down to asking each of the respondents about what are the most important capabilities in their e-discovery that they would like to see in the next 1 to 2 years. And predominantly, when we looked at the top 5 reasons, they would like to access and configure all matters in one place. So like a universal interface to all their matters, whether they're on-premise, whether they might be in the cloud. Next would be an integrated analytics for their investigations and their review. Transfer between matters, 40%, that was the 3rd highest, and obviously with more than 2 or more providers, that's an issue. And the multi-matter view, same thing as kind of the access, configure, and manage all across the board. And that's the ability also to, I guess right underneath there, is to reuse data in closed matters. So something that struck both Mike and I on this one was actually the integration with Office 365 seemed to be a little bit low. But I looked at that and I thought, you know, Mike and I talked about this one, right? It's like, okay, when you go to Office 365, one of your criteria is not, you know, what are we going to do with e-discovery, right? That's usually an afterthought. So at least that's how we
Right, and I actually attended one of the Office 365 sessions yesterday, and even the Microsoft guy was saying the same thing.
Okay, well, that's good. We got some validation.
Yeah.
Anyone from Microsoft in the room? No, okay. So, you got the clicker.
All right. So I'm going to talk about Relativity's hybrid model, and actually I'll jump back real quick. I mean, really plays well with that access, configure, and kind of manage all in that user interface, some of the top items, and transferring data between matters, and a few of the others. Let's go ahead and jump in. So what is the Relativity hybrid model? I mean, we know businesses are facing ever-changing challenges, and either a single just on-prem or just a cloud solution that nowadays it's not a one-size-fits-all solution. You have different needs, different projects, different locations, and you need something that's flexible and can work with kind of data at anywhere, anytime, and any place. For us, that really comes down to the 3 components. We really want to give you that flexibility. It's all about having the flexibility, choice, and options, and then having that consistent, going back to that top data point, the consistent user experience. You know, the same interface, same techniques, same templates, workflows, and doing it all in a secure environment, and having complete control. So we'll dive down those 3 components: flexibility, user experience, and the control and security. Flexibility. Like I said, it's giving you, with the Relativity model, you have lots of options now. So you obviously have your Relativity 1 option for the cloud deployment. Right now, most our deployments are partner instances. That'll continue to be an option. We have growing enterprise, law firm, and corporation on-prem, as well as a couple mobile devices, appliance, and notebook. So it's a lot of flexibility in how you choose to deploy. Next, that unified experience, that really goes to the workspace portal and being able to seamlessly access from one single pane of glass all your matters, and whether they're an instance that's on-premise, an instance that is running up in Relativity 1, or an appliance, and this could be across the country or really across the globe. And then that control and security. For control, I mean, data's jurisdiction is a big requirement, especially for a lot of the international locations. So if you have data that can't leave that country, or for corporate security reasons, it can't leave that corporate firewall, want to be able to do that on-premise solution with the same software, same solutions that you're using for all your other solutions. And then if it can go into the cloud, really taking advantage of Microsoft's top security. It was talked about at the keynote yesterday. They're really more security certifications than any of the other cloud providers. So unlike some of the other providers, we don't want to force you to have that choice of making, okay, I've got to go all in on an on-premise or all in on a cloud solution. We want you to treat your projects and your matters, address the need of that matter, address that need of that project as it comes up. Give you opportunities for growth, whether it's an international. It could be a corporation that's opening, does most of your business in a single country, but then opens a manufacturing facility in China or Germany where the data needs to stay. And so you're going to get to re-leverage all your existing trainings, workflow. Don't have to learn new techniques, new customizations. Let me go ahead and put these all out, and I'll come back to them. Big advantage of having the R1 as an option as well, Relativity 1, is it gives you, I think probably everyone here has experienced that case that's going to be, this is going to be really small, it's going to be really simple, it's not going to be a whole lot of data, and then out of nowhere it explodes. You might be left scrambling. So now you have the ability for that scalability for when those surprises happen, and what was supposed to be small and easy to start now is terabytes, tens of millions of documents, and you're not trying to build and manage infrastructure behind it. And then kind of how you started off, just that data, Sean. Now there's more and more data everywhere, that social media, text messaging, Slack, all the different forms. So it's the ability to, we don't know what's going to come out next year, years in the future. So having these different options and flexibility to be able to address those. And the last one here is really important to us, is the ability for you to leverage your existing investment. We know that people have significant investments in hardware, infrastructure, people, and even if you are one of those groups that have a formal cloud plan, and maybe it's a cloud first mandate, it's not realistic to just tomorrow or next week 100% just lift and shift. So we know it needs to be a gradual, gives you this opportunity to do a phased approach. You can build something in the cloud over time, keep things that are already, you've already got all the data built and maybe matters are halfway through, work those through, and you can kind of maybe over time things either maybe they'll go to equilibrium, forever have things in both environments, or over time it'll go all cloud and retire, when it makes sense based on your investment, the on-prem investment.
Some of the vote data that I talked about earlier, we actually looked at some of the budgets for the end of this year and early next year. And despite the fact that applications are moving to the cloud kind of slowly, budgets are still looking for that to increase infrastructure on-premise. So really the budgets aren't moving to the cloud as much as we're kind of exploring applications and workloads in the cloud. Budgets are still on the ground.
Yeah, that surprised me that even there was a little uptick. So questions for you. Want to know, just go to, I'll list a few challenges that we've surveyed people in the past and interested in hearing, so you can answer more than once, but if this is a big challenge or concern for you, it's addressing the needs of any matter. But entering new markets, does that come into play? Managing the demand and balancing of workloads, those things that scale unexpectedly. See some heads nodding.
I wore them out.
What's that?
I wore them out.
Yeah? What about the whole data challenge of the needs of tomorrow? Are you guys running into a lot of different data types these days that you weren't seeing? So earlier I was just talking into the data and then kind of how we're approaching it, where we think it fits. But these are the actual features from a technical perspective of it's some key features that put together our hybrid solution. First, it starts with single sign-on. A very secure single authentication method, preferably, definitely two-factor is what we'd recommend and strongly endorse. But it's that single first sign-on to not just one, but as many instances of workspaces as that you have access to. Then the user and group client sync. So this from an administrative overhead, it can save a lot of time and effort if someone has access to multiple instances and deployments, that you're not creating the same account over and over again, managing passwords in multiple places, and for the end users having to remember multiple URLs and locations and where am I going. But going back to security, there's a security feature as well for when somebody, if your employee at your company leaves or an employee at your client and they had access to 5 different instances, and you just don't have to track those all down in the threat of maybe you got 4 and forgot about their access to the 5th. It can be access disabled in a single location, and then that's pushed out to all the instances that they had access to. And then the workspace portal, so once you're in, this is that single pane of glass, the ability to just from one place jump into workspaces, and really seamless to where it is, from physically where that data is kind of being located. You just click a button and jump right in. We'll take a look at what a screenshot of what it looks like. And once you have the single trusted authentication and you have all your users and that pane of glass, now you can really take advantage of a lot of secure data transfer using RIP, the Relativity Integration Points, to move data between instances, or use an ARM as an archive tool, or for a big case that you want to get more than just the data out of.
And that means reusing the data as well, right? From
yeah, absolutely. You can use Relativity Integration Points to kind of build that superset of data and then reuse coding decisions to push out, so you don't have to have people coding something that's privileged over and over and over again. So it's a visual. Actually, it's you were at the keynote. It should seem familiar. Talked about it all starts with that single authentication method. And then you jump to that workspace portal, which is going to give you access to whether it's out in Relativity 1 or a partner's deployment or your own on-premise deployment. Once you have that connection, now we're able to do that data transfer using the RIP or the ARM, whatever best meets that specific project use case. Just a visual, this is what the workspace portal looks like. It probably might be too small of type to tell, but each one, you get the workspace name, and then below that I'll show you what instance this is running in. So here you could have cards for a few cases that are up in Relativity 1, a few cases at Partner 1, a few cases at Partner 2, and another case sitting in an on-prem deployment. And for users, they just log in, click, and you jump seamlessly right to wherever that is. And you can also create, from this, you create a new workspace, and you'll get the option of, okay, where should this new workspace be created? This is a screenshot of the user group and sync. So this goes back to being able to easily just manage. How it works is you'll have a master instance that really defines the initial users and the groups and different client structures. And then from there, that can push out to all the other instances. Want to know for you, is there a specific feature that resonates with you or that you're most excited or think it's kind of the key component, or is it all the whole? Anyone really see the single sign-on? Right, got a few. The user group and client sync, the kind of decrease management. See Rob over there nodding, but has a lot of instances out there. The workspace portal, does that kind of resonate? Great.
How about data transfer? Okay.
Excellent. Yeah, that's where we think there's a lot of opportunity, really, as we continue to build this out and develop. It's from time and a lot of risk mitigation. Think about every time you transfer data between systems, people, all the exports, and then whether you're emailing it or putting it on a USB drive, and then shipping on FedEx. It's a lot of chances for error. It's a lot of chances for security risks, and then just so we can improve security as well as increase efficiencies with the data transfer. So how do we see this actually in specific use cases? I'll walk through a few administrative and a few more functional use cases. The first is the most basic, and we refer to as just the one-to-one access. This would be connecting a on-premise Relativity instance to a Relativity 1 instance, and then have the ability to manage and access workspaces in both environments. Next is the cross-organizational access. As we saw before, that more than half of law firms and corporations work with multiple partners. So this is where that can play. So if you need to work in multiple instances, not just maybe your on-prem and your R1, but you are working with multiple locations, this is the ability to access those across organizations. And then finally, this really plays more to our large partners who might have 3, 4, dozens of instances around the globe, is more of that just single administrative central location, so you don't have to go manage access to 20 different, for the same person in 20 different places. Right now, that the one-to-one instance is available, and then in Q2 next year, development plans will have the next 2 available. I brought up earlier the international growth. There's a couple, again, going with the flexibility. Certainly, as we've seen just from the data we collect monthly, continue to see a big growth in international growth in both Europe and Asia Pacific. And with Azure, you saw the map the other day with all of the different Azure locations. So we think that gives just a great opportunity to continue to expand, as if your company has offices and needs, or you have clients that continue to do more international business, to either spin up and work with us in Relativity 1, where one of those Azure centers are, or if Azure's not available, or just for other reasons it needs to be on premise, you can take over a notebook or an appliance or build a larger infrastructure. And then lastly, that just phased approach of transitioning, that if you do want to move to the cloud, but not all at once, kind of do that gradual phased approach.
Which is what all the data is pointing to, is everyone seems to be doing that phased approach. So,
yeah, there's a lot of time and investment in what everyone already has. If you were starting from scratch, it's a whole lot easier than when you have years and years of investment. Here's a list of the functional use cases. I'll go ahead and just drive some visuals into more detail. Got three specific models I want to show you, where you can see more working hand in hand, where you start one place and end the other. And I'd love to hear additional use cases that you guys might have. But one is where you're going to do some work on site. Maybe you're starting with a really large amount of data, or a corporation has, for data jurisdiction or maybe really sensitive data, it needs to start where it is. So we'll initially get just large amounts of data and push that through our on-prem deployment of Relativity. But after that, we know only a subset, much smaller amount of that data is relevant, and it needs to be exposed to a whole array of people from different organizations. These could be attorneys, partners, and you don't want to, if you're the corporation, maybe not comfortable with giving all these external users access to inside of your firewall. They need to go get VPN accounts. They need to get set up in a Active Directory, and that can be a big issue, letting outsiders inside of that corporate firewall. So here, if that data, now that's been given the okay to leave the country or to leave the firewall, can go up into Relativity 1, now it's much easier to give access to your external parties, multiple companies, multiple people, to do the review and any other work that needs to get done. Do any of you guys see yourselves using this workflow? Excellent. The question is answering. Yep. What's that? Oh, great, great. For those out there, say it's kind of in the starts of rolling that model out. The next one is sort of kind of going the other way. Here's this scenario. A lot of times, I think nowadays we just think that strong cell signals or Wi-Fi is ubiquitous, and no matter where I go, I'm going to be able to connect whatever I need. But we have in here examples of, for this, we'll say, an oil and gas litigation that ends up being tried in a courthouse in rural Mississippi, and that maybe that Wi-Fi and strong cell signal is far from a guarantee, and instead people just print anything and everything that they might possibly need. Well, here could be a use case. So you start with your large set of documents. You're doing work in your primary instance, and then you take, again, a subset of those documents, and in this case, you could push it to a notebook. And our notebook is a powerful laptop. It's a full-fledged running instance of Relativity. So it's not just like exporting the documents, but it's having the workspace and all the advantages. So you can do all your searching and analytics right there, up to about 1 million documents. So a lot more than you would ever want to kind of by hand sort, print, and carry through. You throw those on your notebook. You can take them to your rural Mississippi courthouse, or maybe across the street you have your war room, your little digital war room set up to be able to work with the attorneys for the litigation.
And no one has to go to rural Mississippi to do that. I mean, I go upstate New York and village practice, and there's nothing there. There's not even Wi-Fi in some of those courtrooms. Yeah. And I would imagine the same thing is when you move south of Chicago, doing some practice in rural areas of Illinois. Yep. Just guessing. I'm not sure.
You guys, some people here, you have some experience going to locations where you're like, oh man. Yes?
How do I functionally do that? So how can we functionally do that with an R1 instance when you're always 1 month ahead?
From the R1, because the SQL requirements,
to get it from R1 back to this other instance that's always 1 month behind, because R1's 1 month ahead.
Okay. There could be up to the delay. The notebooks we can do, your worst case scenario would be the 30 days, but on average it could be a 15 delay. So if it was an immediate need, that would be a trouble. And it's pointed out, it's like based on the SQL version and the Relativity version, if we're going to use ARM or RIP, that you're not going to be able to go backwards compatibility. And if the timing, if you couldn't wait on average the 15 days for this scenario, then an export load file. You have to do an export import. And then the last functional use case that I'll talk about, and I think really, the last but not the least, this is really the biggest, the primary, hits home the flexibility. And this is what we really expect to see. Is you guys are working on different projects, different matters all the time, and they all have their own unique requirements. Not every case, each case isn't alike. So here we have case one that's extremely sensitive data. Maybe it's the C-level executives of the company being investigated, and that data they don't want going outside, leaving the company. So the requirement for that case is no cloud, no way, it's staying right here where I know it is. On the other side, your case 3 here, the entire case project data is already up in Office 365. Someone's already committed that they trust the Azure cloud, it's up there, and they want to keep it there. Here, the same solution, if it's just a cloud only or an on-premise only, isn't going to be a solution for both of these solutions, or not solutions for both these projects and cases. They won't meet the requirements. But here, for the first one, this is where we'll do that on-premise deployment, keep that really sensitive case 1 data right there. And then for the third one, you can do the Office 365. Maybe the other one was more case 2, whatever kind of meets the specific needs or is the best opportunity. But here we're able to keep that Azure data in Relativity 1, taking advantage of never leaving the private cloud of Azure and Microsoft, keeping their security. And then in the critical case data for the corporation, keeping that on site as well. Do you guys see these types of needs coming up in projects that'll fit both use cases?
Just out of curiosity, out of everyone here, who's actually doing Office 365 in their organization? Okay.
Third. Does anyone have other use cases or an example of maybe they've already had a need or foresee a hybrid need coming up? Oh, yeah. If it's kind of a message and you see yourself wanting to pursue this or just find out information, we do have an onboarding program, especially right now for that first one-to-one connection. And then as next year rolls out and we have the other options be available. But right now, if you have interest, be sure to contact, you can talk to us after the session, and I'll take your information, or reach out to your account manager. We'll get a ticket, and we have a whole process to kind of get this whole connection. It's a federated, what we call is federated instances. We have a team and an onboarding process to walk you through how to connect an on-prem instance and federate it with a Relativity One instance. With that,
Yeah,
sure.
and the survey that I had discussed earlier in the presentation from combination of 451 and Relativity will be in a published report sometime after Relativity Fest, shortly after Relativity Fest. So everyone here that had scanned their badge coming in will get an alert as to access to that document when it's out. And then, Mike, I'll throw a question about you on the global privacy. What about the growth into Azure data centers? Is there any time frame for that? In other words, data sovereignty and locating your data outside of North America and, I guess, Europe.
Mm-hmm. You say like for our plans of what's coming next for Relativity One and where? Or?
Yeah.
Well, UK is now live. So we have the London Azure Data Center. And we're pursuing, definitely using feedback. So if any of you have to really drive where the greatest opportunities are and needs are, I know there's ideas have been thrown out. I know I've heard people mention Hong Kong. I've heard Australia mentioned. I've heard Germany mentioned. But I think right now we're really waiting for the market to drive it. We're ready to go where you guys need to go. And we just need to hear from you on where you think the need and opportunity is. Going to give, if you haven't, let you know about upstairs, just outside the community pavilion for our UX team. If you guys, from an interface, they got a team up there that's doing mock-ups on the fly and can work with you. So if you'd love to see something change or be like, oh, it'd be great if this was over here, or why does it work this way? If you haven't already, be sure to talk to the UX team up there. They'd love to hear from you. With that, be sure to let us know how things go. But any questions? Great. Well, thank you very much, again, for both coming to the session and for coming to Relativity Fest. Really appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you.